Marketers are still hesitant to invest more money with the creators. This is a mistake, and this is why in this video I want to talk about the 3 hesitations that I've discovered in all of my conversations with the CMOs and digital marketing leaders. And I would like to suggest a couple of ways by which you as a creator or an agent or a manager who supports the creator can tackle them. The first objection, if you may, is really helping CMOs to understand where to place the creator on their marketing funnel. If you're not familiar, this is roughly the visual, at least I created with my limited design skills. But the idea of the marketing funnel is really the idea of predicting the stage at which your current lead is for you as a CMO, as you kind of like try to navigate the environment of trying to put your brand in front of a potential buyer and getting them to purchase, right? And the whole idea is that pretty much all of the potential buyers start at the awareness level, where you as a CMO run different kind of campaigns and advertising motions to really just get folks familiar with the product or your brand. Then the qualified lead, you really start narrowing down that pool of individuals and really trying to understand, like, if you're selling a luxury good for certain individuals within a certain geographical region, ideally the qualified leads represent those individuals at that income level and at that geographical level. So you kind of like narrow it out. Some folks who are not in your target market cannot afford your product, and you kind of like dump them down into qualified lead stage. Then the conversion means actually they're going and they're making the purchase, right? They're subscribing to your service, they're buying your product, digital, physical product, whatever that may be. And then the retention part is really just all about how you put them back almost like in a funnel and make sure they're still happy with the product, they're retained, and they either renew the subscription or buy the product again if it's a repeatable purchase type product. But essentially for you as a creator, you constantly think about how do you move people through that funnel and kind of like keep them at this conversion and retention level so that you can continuously can add more and more and more to your revenue pool. And so for many marketers, the decision that they need help making is where to put the creators, because for a lot of things that the marketers today do, they primarily touch kind of like on this top of the funnel, but they're very specific, right? They're kind of like, if you go to a certain, say, Super Bowl, Super Bowl is purely an awareness play. Rarely, I think, the brands get real conversion from the Super Bowl. The whole idea of doing a Super Bowl ad here in the United States is to put your brand in front of 100 million people who are watching the game. So this is the idea of kind of like, okay, this is the channel for that. And then there might be some sort of like a landing page that you develop and you funnel through digital marketing folks to that landing page, and landing page setups a conversion. So that whole campaign is purely for the conversion, where I think for the creators, the change that the marketers have to kind of like adapt to is that you can use creator across that entire funnel. You can use creators who are big enough to kind of like leverage the awareness portion, right? Advertising with Mr. Beast, I would argue, is a good example of you really just doing something for the awareness, right? Because each video is viewed by, like, again, 100 million people. So you have a chance to put your brand in front of all those individuals. Qualification, that can be the other part of it. You can focus on a very specific creator with a very specific niche. And as long as you match, say, your product targets the same individuals that that individual in that niche targets, that's a perfect creator for you to now work with to identify those more qualified leads that are in your target market. Conversion can be a great tool if you set up the right campaign in the right type of pitch and you drive the creator to create some sort of call to actions in their content for the folks to sign up for the free trial or to purchase your service or the product with certain special terms like a discount or maybe some 3 months off if it's a subscription service. So you can kind of like drive the actual conversion. And then retention can be the case with the creators if you go and you work with the creator to communicate some updates, right? Say you've already worked with the creator to drive content awareness of, say, your subscription tool. And now, over the past 6 months, you released a few really exciting features. So you can again work with the creator to say, okay, now we're not going to necessarily drive the conversion, but I will use an advertising spot in your video to really communicate all these cool new features that we released. So we can kind of like excite that audience that hopefully signed up before because we know it from the data. And now they continue to watch your content, and through your content, we're going to remind them that, hey, the product is improving. Go check out some of those features. One of the good examples that comes to mind, partnership between Spotter and Colin and Samir, where they do a nice balance of things where some advertising spots, they talk specifically about call to actions like, hey, go sign up for this 60-day free trial. And in some cases, really Colin and Samir advertising read focuses on, hey, look at all of these cool features that Spotter Studio launched recently. So again, retention play versus a conversion type play. And I think this is the important part, kind of like for marketers, creators, anyone who is working with the creators to really get across with some of these brand partnerships is that you can have a long-lasting relationship with a creator that touches on different parts of the funnel. Awareness may be a little bit of a tougher one, depending on the size of the channel, but anything from the qualified lead down, right? So again, just quickly popping this visual, anything from this portion down, I think is smack beautifully placed with any creator within the niche that matches the interests of the audience that also is the target audience for that brand, right? So if that brand sells the product or services for that specific audience and the content creator targets with their content that audience, you can pre-qualify them, you can convert them, and you can also work on the content ad reads as a retention tool by communicating some of these new features. So I think it's important to help CMOs and digital marketers, and that's something I do a lot when I talk to them, to comprehend that, hey, you don't have to kind of like split the creator in your mind across all of these planes and try to like put them in a single box. The beautiful part with working with the creator is that you can do all these three things, and if it's a big enough creator, you can do the fourth one as well. So this is an important thing for you to keep in mind, that if you sense some sort of hesitation or you sense some sort of questions or there's some uncertainty around kind of like what kind of campaign they want to run with you, remind them that as a creator or as an agent who represents a creator, you can provide services across all of these levels, and you can structure a campaign in a way that drives the right KPIs, so key performance indicators, based on CMOs and digital marketer and leaders targets that also fit the type of value that the creator can provide. So very important, keep that in mind, keep in mind that funnel, and keep in mind how you kind of like position yourself as a creator or your creator as someone who works with the creators within that funnel, and make sure you communicate and use kind of like their language, because all of the marketers will understand that, and that's how they kind of like roughly vision and think through their deliverables and some of the things that they need to do in their day-to-day job. Now, the second type of objection that you will frequently see from some of the CMOs is that they don't really know where to correctly leverage the creator outside of just the funnel, but specifically within the type of content or the type of advertising campaigns that they can execute. And the good news is that if, say, billboards can only be used for visual, live events can only be used for like live events, activations, and some video spots on, say, the YouTube itself, right, and the mid-rolls and pre-rolls, or on the TV can be used in very specific ways. The good news with the creator is that you can do with the creator a lot. There's categories of things that obviously will be more valuable than the next for a very specific company that is trying to drive certain type of, again, performance indicators. But you, again, have to kind of like remind them that as a creator, you can do all of this, right? And I like to kind of like leverage this example from one of my friends, Sam, who initially kind of like suggested, he used that phrase of like, hey, CMOs need to use the whole chicken when it comes to working with a creator. And I thought it was such a nice and easy way of understanding it, because that's right. Marketing leaders are used to thinking about working with specific agencies, specific marketing channels, or specific types of creatives, say like celebrities, in a very narrow format, right? There's a very specific action. If it's a celebrity, they're on screen. If it's, again, billboard, it's a one way. If it's a marketing agency, they do just this one or a couple of different things. For the creator, you can start thinking about multiple different ways, right? First and foremost, I always say creators are experts of the audience. If you align with the fact that this specific creator targets the type of audience who is also your target audience for your product as a service, as a marketing leader, you can work with them to really start thinking about the strategy and how you communicate certain value points to that audience. Because guess what? If the creator is targeting that audience and makes content for that audience for the past like 8 years, good to fair chance that they really understand what that audience cares about and what kind of things they will truly value. You think about, again, visual presence. Content creators are used to be in front of the camera, unless it's a faceless channel, but even then they know how to present certain type of information in a visual format. So you can, again, leverage their expertise and experience, and you don't need to hire a bunch of different people who just narrowly focus on that. Creators usually can do both of these things. Guess what? Creators can do more in the multi-platform side of things, right? When it comes to many creators today, they realize that you have to be multi-platform. You have to think about the short-form strategy, the long-form strategy. You have to think about some of the visuals that you use, right? You represent yourself as a brand, as a creator. Now, because they understand all of these things, it's much easier to work with them, because they're not like a celebrity who is like, hey, I'm only good on camera. I don't do whatever, audio tutorials and stuff like this. I don't do podcasts, or like I don't do something else, XYZ. creators, again, due to the nature of the fact that they have to be flexible, they know how to navigate different types of media, which again creates a lot of flexibility for the brand, because the brand can partner with the same creator to do the photo shoot, to do the video, to do some sort of like a podcast recording. Again, even the writing piece, if the creator is versed at that, right? There's multiple different avenues by which you can approach working with the creator and not be pigeonholed into a very specific type of action only because that brand agency or that specific celebrity only do that thing. Creators, just due to the nature of how we evolve, we have to be very much multi-platform. And then again, coming back to being multi-platform, live activations and in-person events pretty much is something that can be fully supported by the creators as well. There are some limitations. There are certain types of creators who prefer not to do this kind of things, but in general, if it's a established enough creator who is very comfortable, so to speak, in their skin, and they've been in person, so to speak, with some of those members of the audience, they'll be very comfortable to go with you to some sort of like a event, some sort of expo where you present your product, and they can be there in the booth with you. You can host a very specific event if that's something you do, and have the creator on the floor, so to speak, working, interacting with potential clients, talking to them about the brand. Again, because they know how to be that kind of like, they know how to drive that kind of presence. They know how to be in front of the crowd. They know how to talk about those value points, what we discussed a little bit earlier. And finally, they are a distinct voice and a distinct face in that industry. Chances are, if that creator have worked kind of like on the type of content and have interacted with the audience within it, because they were making the content in that niche for the past, again, 5, 6, 8 years, they know how to talk the lingo, they know how to communicate those value points. They're very comfortable in their skin, and they kind of like represent that niche to some extent if they're popular enough. So for you as a brand to partner with them and to use them as one of those voices, or maybe the voice that represents your brand, that can be actually a huge driver of value communication to your audience, because again, you're partnering with someone who knows how to speak that language and knows what that audience cares about, but also because they have that individual presence. They are representative of that specific industry. You can go and leverage that to your advantage as a brand. As with many companies out there these days, right? I'm forgetting who specifically said it, but there's this saying that I like is many creators, especially in very specific niches, they think about diversifying their revenue. And eventually, they would want to create a business within that specific niche. And guess what? If you're the company in that specific niche, you have two options now. Either that creator brand will be your competitor, and they will be a very effective competitor, or they will be your partner. So you choose as a CMO, as a digital entrepreneur, whether you want to be kind of like going up against the creators and them building their brands. Example of Hershey's going up against the Feastables today, right? Or Gatorade going against the Prime. You will have opportunities to partner with the creators. And I think it's important for you to evaluate across all of these 5 things that I've mentioned. Is it worth for you to become very close with one or two of the creators in that niche and work with them on creating that consistent voice and messaging around the product or service you're selling? Or is it something you want to avoid? Go stick to your old guns and then risk the fact that one of these creators will either partner with another ankle biter in the industry and they will partner with them and help them grow, or they will actually go and create your own brand. So again, as a creator or an agent, that's not probably the initial talking points I would use when talking to the CMO. It might be very hostile, but for you as a CMO, like, you understand those kind of things. You face the competition. You constantly talk to your corporate intelligence team about all the different companies that are doing interesting things to try and kind of like slice off small portions of your market to eventually the point where they grow big enough to go against you directly. This is another example where partnering with a creator today can give you enough of firepower to go up against the biggest mastodons in your specific industry. So you kind of have to think about it from a strategic standpoint as well, and almost like land grab it, right? If you know that there are very few creators in that niche who talk about that very specific topic, and there's like 10 different companies that compete against each other in that industry, chances are the company that will create the best partnership with one of those creators will succeed. So it's an important consideration, something to think about. And again, break that mold of thinking that individuals can only do a single type of job. The beautiful part about the creators, they can do all of those things that I just described, and it's important for you to leverage those for the most effective and highest ROI campaigns in your specific segment. And finally, the third type of objective, it's more of an education for the creators, agents, and managers out there. CMOs will get that point very quickly, but it's all about the internal sales that the CMO or the digital marketing leader has to face within their organization. Because if you did not know, they cannot individually just make a decision across, especially the investments when it comes to marketing campaigns. Every year or every few months, quarters, there's an internal process in these companies that have to go through the forecast of their revenue, how much of a marketing investment that revenue would take, what's the kind of like return on that investment. And usually CMO has to deal with all of these people on a daily basis, where as they're kind of like in the middle, the two big parties that you usually have to sell on as a digital marketing leader are the CFOs and the CEOs. CFOs, from the perspective of the budgeting, right? Those are the people who sign off on the expenses and they need to understand how you're going to spend the money. And CEOs, obviously, assuming they're very actively involved in some of those decisions. Some CEOs, to some extent, love to leave kind of like CMOs to their own devices, but many CEOs would want to know and understand how we're allocating the marketing to kind of like double check, is this going to drive the right type of behavior, right type of clientele that we want to acquire? And then you have kind of like revenue operations leaders supporting usually the CFO in their organization, and they have to go run their forecasts, do all sorts of calculation to make sure everyone understands what kind of metrics they need to hit, and it all makes it into the reporting. And then go-to-market function leaders, essentially, those would usually be your like next tier rank sales, success organization, some of the, again, marketing functions, product marketing functions, essentially those functions that will need to understand, okay, if we, from the CMO strategy, target a very specific segment, we need to understand the personas in that segment and those type of personas, what kind of sales motions they require. So sales leaders need to understand. Success will need to understand what kind of motions we need to set up to go and renew those functions, right, and so on and so forth. So there's like a lot of trickle down effect from those decisions into all like deeper parts of the organization to help them really understand what do they need to do, what kind of key performance indicators, KPIs, and different measures that they need to install to make sure that they monitor and track the performance accordingly. This is what CMOs have to deal with. So whenever you think about, oh, like CMO can just go, like, there's so much value in partnering with this creator, they can just go and sign off on this. Not really. Imagine, especially in some of the more legacy conservative companies, whichever term you might use, who are not used to dealing with the creators, CMO has to go to the CFO and tell them, hey, I'm about to drop $500,000 on TikToks. Or, hey, CEO, I'm about to spend half of your marketing budget to invest in these two specific creators on YouTube. That's a tough conversation, especially if you're not equipped with the right tools, with the right education materials. If the rest of the organization don't understand this, it's a tall hill to climb for you to approve something like this over your traditional TV, radio, print, advertising, your SEM and SEO investments, which now, after like almost 2 decades worth of education, information, you have people, the CMOs and CFOs and CEOs who grew up with that, so they understand inherently the value of those marketing channels. Creator is new. Creator marketing channels, like individuals who natively grew up being influenced by the creators, they're just about probably hitting the middle management, maybe higher up, like VP level management in those companies. Unless it's a very small company, very few of them made it to the C-suite level right now to instill and drive those decisions. So think of your older boss who is in their like 50s and 60s. Think about you trying to communicate to them the value of the creator economy and how they should invest in it. It's probably going to be challenging. And this is why, right? Like you have to educate them. You have to help them understand the value. And this is a big hurdle. I think out of the three, in my experience and all the conversations, this is the biggest hurdle right now. It's going to go away over time, as I said, as more of these individuals who natively used to work, like listening and being influenced by the creators, as they kind of like move up in the ranks and they become the C-suite, it'll be a very natural thing for them because they'll be like, yeah, this is how I bought 60% of my products. So it's a no-brainer for me to go and approve an investment into the same type of channel. But I think we're still probably about at least 5, maybe 10 years away from that being completely seamless. Between the next 5 to 10 years, I think we just need to continuously educate the individuals at these companies and help them understand the value. That's something I focus a lot on these days doing. And that's, if you're an agent or a manager, that's something you have to focus on. And even as a creator, you just have to be patient and understand that although for us, the value of working with the creators might be evident, for the CMO, CFO, CEO, and all of their teams, it might still be kind of like this mental hill to climb and get across over the ridge, so to speak, to see the valley full of opportunities when it comes to working with the creators, right? So this is an important objection. And again, this is something I think less of things that the creators directly influence. That's something I think folks like me who come from the business environment, who understand the value, have to just turn around and communicate the value back to the CMOs, their teams, CFOs, and their teams, and all other kind of like go-to-market revenue operations functions. That's something, again, I focused a lot these days. This is one of my goals, kind of like my ideal world is my oyster. I think the best case scenario, 50% of the marketing spend globally goes through the creators. This is the goal. This is the target. So we're kind of like working towards it through this kind of content, but also through all the different events that I attend, all the CMOs and digital marketing leaders who I reach out and kind of like discuss this topic too. So I'm not shy about asking these questions and trying to help them. And from those conversations, I see that this is not like flip of a switch motion. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to educate them, to get them comfortable and provide them with the tools and resources to help kind of like easily adopt creator-led campaigns. And is one of their primary sources of leads, qualified leads, or potential revenue conversions. So yeah, these are the three objections. As I said, there's quite a few more. I kind of like tried to pick the three top ones from my experience and all the conversations. I'm continuously talking. I try to like talk to at least one of the marketing leaders a week. So there's going to be more updates, I think, as the industry evolves, as 2025 evolves, as we see more examples of successful creator campaigns. I think the attitudes will shift here and there, but it will still be continuous education. So as we kind of like go further down in that education journey, I bet you there are going to be new objections that's going to pop up. I'm going to have to figure out how to tackle them. There's going to be another objection and we're going to have to tackle that. And it's absolutely normal. That's a fine process of getting folks slowly comfortable with the ideas that seem more natural to us. So something we will see again. I will definitely come back to this style of video and talk a little bit about some of the objections, talk about some of the examples of conversations I've had in the future. I'll try to do it maybe like every few weeks, every couple of months, just to keep you all up to date. And it also helps me sometimes to sit down and summarize these thoughts. So let me know in the comment section below if you've seen other objections or you have questions about some of these objections that I've discussed today. Otherwise, there's a lot of already content on my channel talking about how to tackle some of these subjects with the CMOs. I just updated it based on some of the more recent conversations, and I will update it yet again in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, and there will be other interesting topics within this realm of like merging the creator economy, regular economy, and helping figure out to all of us, how can we make creators as the main marketing channel globally? So this is the goal. We're working towards it, and I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.